So moving on to 5-year inspections. What do we inspect at 5 years? Well, we inspect a lot of things. We inspect system piping, all of our system valves, alarm, dry, pre-action, deluge, and backflow valves are internally inspected. Strainers and restricted orifices and check valves are all inspected on a 5-year basis. So what do we do on a 5-year? Well, to put it simple, we remove the cover and look for bad stuff. You can see our pictures here. Some of these valves look pretty bad, but the one on the left there, that's a pre-action valve. Looks like there's a lot of corrosion in it, but that's actually pretty normal that we see in these valves. The lower right would be an alarm valve. This would be on a typical wet system. Looks a little dirty in there, but that's actually also pretty typical. And our valve up here on the right, on the upper right, is a dry valve. And this one indicates we've got some problems. This valve would be completely cleaned and assessed, and then we'd also do additional assessments within the piping to see if there's additional corrosion like we have here in our dry valve. This is why we inspect internally in the pipe to assure the condition is still serviceable in the event of a fire. The picture you see here, the large one, is a dry pipe system. Obviously, we've got a lot of corrosion and scale built up in this. If there was a fire with this location and that sprinkler head activated, that corrosion and scale may very well push right up into a sprinkler head and plug it up. Actually, it's more than likely that's what's going to happen. We also find this occasionally in wet systems. You can see our lower picture there from our teams in California. That is a wet system that has considerable amounts of sludge and debris in it that we had to remove and flush a bunch of piping. So it's not typically common that we find these, but this is why we look inside these pipes. And then strainers, filters, and restricted orifices. This is a strainer from a water motor alarm. This water motor alarm was actually still functioning. Shows you how durable these things are even when they get plugged up. But when these things plug, your system may be partially impaired or not function properly. So we do internal inspections on those on a 5-year basis. Check valves. So on a 5-year basis, we internally inspect all of your check valves. And we inspect for corrosion inside those valves, and then to make sure that the valve will open and close properly. As you can see by some of these photos, some of these check valves are not the easiest things to get inside of and check their operation. And then gauges. Gauges are tested on a 5-year basis. They're either calibrated or replaced. Oftentimes, it's just as economical to replace that gauge as it is to calibrate it. Hydrostatic testing. We hydrostatically test fire department connections to 150 psi every 5 years. They're pressurized to 150 psi, and they need to maintain that pressure for 2 hours. And then dry standpipes, we hydrotest at 200 psi. And then we inspect those systems for leaks under pressure. So one of the other things we do on a 5-year basis is flow testing. Automatic standpipes are required to be tested every 5 years. We flow those at 500 GPM for the first riser and 250 GPM for each additional riser. In Oregon and Washington, this is common practice. This is how we test these standpipes, only the automatics. In California, all standpipes are subject to flows. So many of your standpipes there, the dry standpipes or the manual standpipes, also are required to be flowed. So those take a fire truck to perform those flows since they're not an automatic standpipe. Flow testing. One of the other items we flow test are pressure regulating valves. This is a pressure regulating hose valve. These are used where pressures in the system are higher than are for safe use by firefighters. So we perform flow tests on these to make sure that they will maintain a flow of 250 GPM with a residual pressure of either 65 or 100 psi, depending on when the system was installed. Those are the requirements in NFPA 14. Some jurisdictions have requirements for higher pressure and flows. So always a good idea to check your jurisdiction or contact your service company to make sure that we know what those proper flows are.